You're at a party and everyone's favourite topic of conversation comes up, religion. And your atheist friend asks you, what is the point of Christianity? What's the vision? What is the goal for a Christian? How do you respond? What's your answer? There are a number of ways, of course, that we could answer that question, but today I want to keep it as simple as possible. I want to suggest that the goal of Christianity is to grow in love. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, hang on, Father Dan, what about heaven? What about healing and happiness and freedom and peace and joy? Well, yes, they are all part of the Christian vision too, but those outcomes are ultimately the fruit of love. And when I say love, I don't just mean us giving love, which we can be pretty good at, but it also involves us receiving love, which can be much more difficult for some of us. But it's absolutely crucial to be receiving it because we can't give over a sustained period of time what we haven't received. Yeah? This is supposed to be what the spiritual life is all about. As we draw closer to Christ, we should start notice love manifesting itself in all kinds of different ways in our life. And I want to just give you a few simple examples today. Okay? I want you to imagine that you're going for a walk and you're going for your regular morning walk on the same route, yeah? But you start to notice on your morning walks that things are changing a little. Like, for example, you start to notice the people that are walking by you a little bit more. You're a little bit more attentive. And you're not just looking at their shoes or their nice tracksuits, whatever. But there's a bit of compassion in your heart and you're thinking, I wonder what's going on in their life. I wonder what they've experienced throughout their journey. I wonder what's going on right now for them. And maybe sometimes you even feel like you should pray for them. You say a little prayer. God bless that person. It's weird, but it's just, I don't know, this new thing that's happening. Anyway, you keep walking and you're walking past the same old trees and the same old ovals. But now, again, something's a bit different because you're kind of noticing them a bit more and you're thinking, God, that tree's beautiful. Why didn't I notice it before? Or that grass. And maybe you even sort of touch the tree. You might look a bit weird, but you're like, oh, that tree's so beautiful. You feel this sense of connection, like with creation. It's weird. You're not sure why, but it's just sort of happening in you, right? Anyway, you keep walking and then you notice that you're conscious of what you're thinking. You ever notice that? Normally our thoughts just go and we're just lost in them, but sometimes we become conscious of it. And again, something's different because normally when you're conscious of your thoughts, you realise you're quite negative towards yourself. You're like, oh, you idiot. You didn't do this, you didn't do that, you stuffed up. What about 5 years ago when you did that? And, we can be very judgmental, right? But you notice something's a bit different. The voice is sort of shifted a bit. It's more kind. It's like a voice of love, reminding you that you're not perfect, but mate, you're totally loved. You're good. You're growing. There's so much good in you. You're like, what is going on here? Anyway, so you keep walking and you're almost home by now and you're like 5 houses away and you walk by this neighbour's house. You don't know them, but you notice that some hooligan has left all this rubbish on their front lawn, all these McDonald's wrappers and nuggets and chips, and you're thinking, who would have done that? And you're about to walk by, but then you think, I don't know. Well, if that was my house, I'd pick it up, so why not? I'm going to love on my neighbour. I'm going to do something good for the environment. So you pick it all up and you think, my bin's just down there, I'll take it away. And you're not doing it because anyone's watching you or because you feel like you have to, or I'll be so good, but you just, something in you just wants to do it. Now, they're just some examples, right? Some simple ways that we might notice love manifesting in our lives. And there are so many other ways. But My point is that love is not just about helping old ladies to cross the road. Yeah? When love is growing in us, it gives us an expanded awareness, an appreciation, a sense of connection with ourselves, with God, with others, and with all of creation. There's this kind of awareness that I'm connected to all of this, all of these people, all of this creation. There's a deep gratitude for it. I'm sure you've noticed, though, that this kind of love doesn't usually just happen, yeah? Unfortunately, love doesn't just magically appear in our hearts because we come to church, right? We know that. The saints make it clear that love is a quality that we need to cultivate, that we need to grow in. They remind us that love is the fruit of deep interior change, or what Jesus referred to as metanoia, which is a word that kind of refers to like a deep rewiring of our heart and our mind. Change, interior change. That's what enables this love to grow within us. John Henry Newman, saint, he said famously, to live is to change, and to be perfect, to grow in love is to have changed often. I think that most practicing Christians, they realise this. They realise that following Jesus is basically signing up to a lifetime of ongoing change and growth in love. Yeah, and I think most of us are up for that. But the thing that we struggle with is the how. How do we do it? Yeah, this is where we tend to get a little bit messed up. We lose our way because we often try to change. We often try to become more loving in the same way that I try and get better at golf or try and get a promotion at work, by our willpower, yeah? By trying harder. I need to try harder to love. We try and put in extra effort to be better, to be more perfect. So we read this second reading from today from St. James, and we think, oh, okay, I need to try harder to be more pure, more peaceful, more kindly and considerate, more compassionate. I've got to do better. Effort and willpower do have an important role in our lives. Yeah, I'm not knocking them. They help us to make good decisions in life, to live according to our values. But in my experience, it's very hard, if not impossible, to will our way to be more genuinely loving. We cannot change our deeper attitudes, our beliefs, our ingrained behaviours if it's just up to our efforts alone. Have you ever tried? Have you ever tried to not be jealous? To not be critical? To not be angry? Have you ever tried? Maybe we can change our behaviour for a while, yeah? For a while, we can be more kind or more generous, more patient. But self-generated change requires constant energy and effort on our part. And after a while, we get exhausted. And then, when we inevitably fail at being loving, we get discouraged, don't we? And then we might start feeling guilty and shameful about the fact that we failed. And then sometimes we can become bitter and resentful about the whole thing. We kind of go on this downward spiral, and we end up in a worse place than when we started. If you notice yourself getting frustrated or fed up when you fail to be the person that you want to be, it's probably because you're making the spiritual life all about you, about your effort, about your performance. And that's exactly what's happening with the disciples in the gospel today. Yeah, they're also going for a walk, but they're not kind of connecting with one another and noticing the beauty around them. What are they doing? They're fighting. They're fighting about who's the greatest. Literally, it's not a joke. That's what they're doing. They're saying, I'm the best. I'm the most loving. I'm the most perfect. A little bit of a sign of spiritual pride, we might say. It's all about what I'm doing. Their spiritual life was still all about their own efforts, what they were doing for God. You see, their performance was changing, but their hearts weren't. And so Jesus sits them down. He says, look, guys, listen. If anyone wants to be first, if anyone wants to be great, if anyone wants to be truly loving, he needs to make himself last of all and servant of all. In other words, true change, true greatness is not something that we do, it's something that God does. And Jesus is saying that God can do that when we embrace the lowest place, and not just the lowest place out there in relationship with others, but also when we embrace the lowest place within ourselves. So that's why Jesus then, he takes that child. You see, children at that time, they had no status, no rights in society. They were kind of outcast. They were disregarded. And so Jesus grabs a child to reinforce his point. He puts his arm around the child and he says, don't disregard him. Don't reject the lowest out there or the lowest in here. Welcome those parts of you. Welcome that child. Welcome that rejected one. Welcome the lowest. Embrace them. Embrace those parts of you with love and compassion. Because when you do that, Jesus says, you welcome me. You welcome God. You welcome love and grace that will heal you and truly change your heart. That's how it works. The greatest change happens not by trying harder, but by humbly and gently acknowledging our weakness, our sin, our failures to love, and giving that to God, and then being patient as the grace of God slowly heals us and changes us, yeah? Not allowing our pride to sort of get the better of us while we wait. We see this time and time again in the Gospels, friends. It's the people who experienced the greatest change, who loved most fiercely, weren't the perfect ones. They were the battered ones. They were the rejected ones. They were the failures. But they had the humility to come to Jesus with it and say, hey, look at this. Can you help me out? They were the ones that were impacted the greatest. So in the Christian worldview, only God's grace can change us, can make us truly loving. Our job is to submit to that grace and trust it. I want to finish by offering 3 steps, 3 ways we can do that. Firstly is to acknowledge. Just to acknowledge our lowest place, our lack of love, our failures, our weakness. Acknowledge it, own it. Secondly, to ask God to change us. Yeah, and just keep asking God. And of course, we're not totally passive here. God's grace will lead us. We need to cooperate with God's grace as He changes us. We might have to go get some good counsel, go to confession, get some therapy, do all kinds of things. But the point is that we don't drive the change. We don't make it happen. God leads us. And thirdly, we need to allow God to do the change in us. This is where we need to be patient. Allowing God to do it can be very threatening to our ego, because our ego likes to think we're in control, that we've got it all covered. That's the spiritual pride part. But if we can just notice that and just sort of like flick it away and just be patient and just humbly allow and wait for God's grace to do what it needs to do. Okay, so acknowledge, ask, and allow. I want to suggest that is how we open our hearts to the love and the mercy and the grace of God, which changes us in the deepest and most significant ways. What is the child in you? What are the rejected parts in you that you might need to welcome? What are the lowest parts of you, those attitudes, those thoughts, those behaviours where you notice a lack of love? I want to encourage you to make that your offering today as we come to the table and trust that just like God will transform the lowly bread and wine into love, into his body and blood, he will also transform those low parts of you and turn them into a love that gives life to the world.